On today's show, I have Eric Bach, the play-by-play man for the Fredericksburg Nationals down in low A Fredericksburg. And guys, this is a treat today because the Fredericksburg Nationals were probably the best minor league team under the Washington Nationals umbrella. So we're going to get all the updates on all the different prospects that you're going to need to know about once these guys make it to the majors. We're going to get into all of that and more after this.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And so now I bring in Eric Bach from the Fredericksburg Nationals. Eric, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, Ryan. Things are good. Thanks for having me on. It's good to reminisce about the FredNats and talk about 2023. It should be a fun time.
Yeah, no, and actually, before we get into that, this was kind of a hot topic when we came down for the Grant and Danny show, the show that I produced down there. Gus, your mascot. Can you give us the background on who Gus, the mascot, is? Because, I mean, he's a wacky character. I love him.
He is a wacky character. The thinking behind him, I believe, is that he is supposed to be George Washington's imaginary friend. So okay. George is a, Fredericksburg guy, right?
Yeah.
Born in Fredericksburg. And you've got Mary Washington University there in Fredericksburg. So the entire Washington family is well represented down there in Fredericksburg. But Gus is a figment of George's imagination. And I'd like to think that he touches the imagination of us all.
I mean, he does. Like, all the kids just love the guy. I mean, every kid loves a mascot, but Gus was like a cool, outgoing mascot. When I got down there, I instantly fell for my guy Gus there.
Yeah,
but of
Gus
course,
Gus is the GOAT.
Gus is the GOAT. It's as simple as that. But we got to talk about some other things. Obviously, Gus is very important, but we got to get to the on-field stuff. And a lot of this, to where I think about with the Fredericksburg Nats, I came down there for a guy like Jarlin Susana's debut with Fredericksburg, and he lit it up. I mean, when you see someone who throws 103 miles per hour and he's 18 years old, standing at 6'6", what is it like to kind of take in someone like that, still in the low A level, who's 18 years old?
Yeah, you hear stories, right? And once the Soto deal happened, we thought that, we're gonna get a haul here in Fredericksburg as far as young prospects that the Padres are going to be giving up. And Susana was actually the reason that the Nationals got him, was because they gave up Josh Bell. It was Susana and Josh Bell. That was kind of the exchange after the prospects, after the Hassels and the Woods of the world came over. But you hear stories like this guy's legitimate, and then you see him and you go, there's just no way that this guy's 18 years old. Yeah. And I mean, he looks like he's about 25 on the mound and, just in regular life. Yeah. And so, he gets on the mound, and it obviously, to my eyes, 99 and 103 don't look that different from, the press box view. But when you watch, especially from behind home plate, you watch the movement of the baseball and all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty remarkable that a human being of his age can manipulate the baseball the way that he does.
Yeah. And that's the crazy part about that too. And, because Susana's been kind of someone who I've kind of just put the crown on already. Like, I have crowned him as a potential future ace just because the fastball is so electric. But then he's got some other stuff. I believe his slider is also one of his.
The slider's like 94.
Yeah.
So like his slider's a lot faster than some guys' fastballs. So yeah. I mean, that to me is the most impressive part of it. Obviously, 103 is 103, and not many people can ever get there. But the slider being mid 90s, I mean, how can you hit that when you're seeing, one pitcher's bringing you 95 with the fastball, and then Susana's got the late movement slider at 95? I mean, come on.
It's unfair. It's legit unfair. And that's actually the sad thing with it. It's like, God, when this guy is like 21, who knows how hard he could throw? Who
I know.
knows what the movement's going to be like and all this wisdom that he's going to collect. But also, there's other guys like Jackson Rutledge, who is a former first-round pick with the Washington Nationals. And, he's had his case of injuries. He's had some struggles. But overall, this guy, like, he put together some really solid starts with the Fredericksburg Nats this year. So, kind of, what have you been seeing out of him? And kind of, because a lot of people say that, well, how is he still in low A Fredericksburg? So how would you kind of answer that two-part question there?
Well, I mean, the injuries are the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even join the team until mid-May, over a month into the season. And it took him a while to get his feet underneath him. He would have dominant stretches early on and then have one awful inning. Like you felt for the guy because he'd have all this positive stuff going on. Like he'd go 4 great innings, and then the 5th inning, things would fall apart in the early part of the season. And then once we got into the second half of the season, into late July, August, September, he really turned into the ace of the staff. Like, it was really cool for him to see. He's obviously older than most of the guys at that level. Mm-hmm. And he really took command of that rotation. Like, when he was out there every week, you could pretty much pencil in a W for the FredNats a night that Jackson Rutledge was starting. As the season went on, he got stronger as he went on in his starts. I think, you talk to Joel Hanrahan, who's, former MLB All-Star closer, who was the FredNats pitching coach. You talk to, the catchers on the team. The complete key for him, they would say, was fastball command. If he had the fastball command, then he could mix his pitches off of that, and it was going to be good. And the last 6-7 weeks of the season, he had that fastball command every single time. And he looked like he was taking, I think the biggest thing for me was, obviously, he was dominating these hitters at the single A level, but he was taking command of the staff and
mm-hmm.
pitching like a true ace of the staff. Like I'm going to go out there. I'm not just going to go beat these guys. I'm going to dig their graves and bury them. Like, that was the type of mentality that he would have. And I think the pitching staff as a whole fed off of that energy that he was giving off. He's not a big talker. He's a very much lead by example type guy. And I was really impressed with his involvement and his development throughout the season.
Yeah, I saw that too. It's like he had a rough first start, rough few months in the minor leagues with Fredericksburg, but then again, you saw him down the stretch. Like, I think his last game, I believe he went 7 innings in the playoffs. With Fredericksburg,
7 shutout innings, and the offense didn't really do much that night. So the FredNats it was a playoff win that happened because of Jackson Rutledge. I mean, the offense scratched across a couple runs, and that was enough because Rutledge was dominant.
Yeah, and that's really just what it comes down to. It's like, obviously run support is needed in every single environment when it comes to baseball. You need guys to produce offense in order to keep the pitchers just kind of feeling safe because, they can't always put the team on their back. But Jackson Rutledge is someone who's kind of been a hot topic around here in Washington, D.C., being a former first-round pick. He had a decent amount of promise with them. He's some big, tall guy. And it just kind of gets people excited. But also, there was Lara, who was an 18-year-old, I believe, to start this season, who's now 19-year-olds. And he kind of struggled as well. But then again, I saw him in person make a start against the Worcester Red Sox, I believe. Worcester?
Would have been Salem Red Sox.
Red Sox. Dang it.
Worcester. Don't make that mistake. That's the AAA of the Boston organization. Trust me, our groundskeeper and former groundskeeper in Fredericksburg is a Boston guy, and I said Worcester one time, and I don't think he spoke to me for a week. So yeah. But it was Salem, the Salem Red Sox. Yeah.
I don't know why I thought, or I already forgot the pronunciation of it. I just want to say Worcester, but Lara was someone. It's what it looks like.
Yeah.
But Lara was someone who, when I was there in person, this is someone to where, again, Nationals fans know he was kind of a hot topic coming out of the international signee period there.
Sure.
And the Washington Nationals did invest quite a bit of money in him. And I saw the return. I saw, when you're 19 years old and you're 18 years old to start out, the ERA is not going to be there. The strikeouts probably won't be there either. There's time to learn. But I believe in stuff, and he had the stuff from what I saw, and it was really promising. So what can you kind of add on that and what you saw from him?
Yeah, I totally agree with your assessment. I mean, inconsistency was the story of his season, which, for an 18 turning 19-year-old is to be expected, right? I mean, he and Rutledge, especially when they struggled, it was because of the one big inning. Like, they weren't able to limit the one big inning, and they had dominant. Even in those starts in which they gave up a big inning, there was a lot of positivity that happened there too. But it's a mental thing for Lara. You're coming to an English speaking country without much English, without a whole lot of experience outside of Latin America. And, but you're right about the stuff. I mean, it's as good as it gets. And he, as was the case with Rutledge, he got better as the season went on and turned into a pretty reliable starter down the stretch for the FredNats. And, as he gets stronger, he's got a really good pitcher's body. He's 6'3", 6'4". He's just a big dude, right? You don't look at him and think 19 years old. And, he's been in the Washington organization for a little while now. I mean, they signed him when he was real young. And as you said, stuff travels. I mean, they can hone, the Deshaun Watson and the player development guys can get his stuff, or can hone that stuff, and turn it into more consistency. But the natural ability is off the charts.
Yeah, and you're totally right on that. And now I want to make a little transition into some big name guys who you've seen this year, including James Wood, former first-round pick Brady House. But before that, I got to tell you guys about my friends from Built Bar. Can we pause the pod for a second? Okay, we're paused. Great, because you got to try this. I'm talking about Built Bar's new reimagined flavors with cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, and coconut brownie topper, white chocolate, peppermint granola. It's Built's take on the granola, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty. And candy cane brownie puff. Built bars are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. First off, for anyone who hasn't tried Built bars before, they're literally the best tasting protein bars ever built. They're re-evolutionizing nutrition as we know it with 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, and shockingly low sugar and calories. Only 130 calories. Get 50% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. And now we bring back in Eric Bach, play-by-play guy for the not for the Washington Nationals. It will be someday. The Fredericksburg Nationals. As seriously, you and Joey Zanaboni on the call, you guys were great. This is something where I always just kind of check the box score, but I tuned into you guys. Always had a ton of fun, and the chemistry that you guys had was definitely real. And we got to meet you guys a couple times. So.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We had a good time. I think it was a pretty good marriage in the booth, and we never took it too seriously. You can't when you're doing 132 games together.
Yeah, I got to talk about Brady House, because as soon as Brady House was assigned to Fredericksburg this year, I was like, I got to go see this guy. This is what everyone was talking about going into this season. So he started off really well, but then he kind of hit a little bit of a rough patch. I believe he suffered a back injury. That was kind of a mystery. But then again, 19 years old, a teenager, everyone relaxed. But what was kind of your thoughts of Brady House this past season?
Started 18. His 19th birthday is in June. So he played the first couple months in Fredericksburg at 18 years old.
And he was killing it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was the best player in the Carolina League for the first month of the season. But, he's a surefire big leaguer, I think, whether that's at third base, shortstop. I mean, he could play anywhere in the infield, really. I think, people always say, oh, House is going to end up at third base. He played exclusively shortstop in Fredericksburg. But, you ask Deshaun Watson, you say, well, is he going to end up at third base? And the answer is always Brady's going to be right where he is right now. So, they want him to develop. I think the bat was ahead of the glove, which makes sense. But, he's got all the tools, plus arm. He can hit the ball with power to all fields. He's got when he was really going, it was his strike zone discipline was really good. When he kind of fell off there, it was when he started chasing some pitches outside of the strike zone and not, it seemed like his approach changed a little bit or was thrown off, which makes sense. It's the first time these kids have ever played every single day. Like, especially the 18-year-olds, the Brady Houses, the TJ Whites of the world, they play in these weekend showcases and they play a bunch of games over a weekend, but it's a professional baseball game every single day. And that's a consistency thing that these guys haven't done before. So I think that maybe kind of wore on Brady a little bit. Obviously had the back injury that sidelined him in mid-June. And I think out of an abundance of caution, they just kept him out. I mean, again, you got to protect your assets, especially when they're this young. And Brady's got a great future ahead of him. And he's a great kid too. I mean, you would never know that he's as young as he is talking to him. He's just one of the guys. And except he's a 6'4", 200+ pound cut up, 19-year-old teenager was given this massive signing bonus by the Nationals and is expected to be a big leaguer. And I think that, at some points, the pressure can get to kids like that. But Brady's going to be fine. I expect him to have a big 2023, whether that's in Fredericksburg, Wilmington, Harrisburg, doesn't really matter. I think he'll be good.
I agree with you. I think people need to pump the brakes on, because I see it's easy to get lost in Twitter and everyone's like, oh, well, this back issue, like what's going on with it? And it's like, guys, he's 19 years old. It's like, fine. He'll be fine. Like,
and they had him once he mysteriously, air quotes, disappeared from Fredericksburg. He was down in West Palm at the Nationals spring training facility with their people every day. So it's not like he just disappeared off the face of the earth. Like the Nationals were working with him every single day. So I mean, they're not gonna just set him out to pasture at 19 years old,
And you're right on that. So here, real quick before we get into our next topic, because I need to talk about James Wood. He is a freak. But thank you for making Locked On Nationals your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes, with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And as I was saying, James Wood. Eric, I can't get enough of this guy. I think this guy, even going into this 2023 season, could have the potential to be a top 5 prospect in all of baseball. I easily think that just from looking at his fielding mechanics. This guy was a baller in the outfield. The way that he ran the bases, not to mention he hits for power. He hits for average. He gets on base. What can't this guy do?
There's nothing he can't do. I mean, he is going to be, I think, an all-star. I mean, he's got every tool in the box. Like you said it. I mean, he can hit for power. He can hit for average. He can hit to all fields. His strike zone discipline is unbelievably good. And he's 6'7", 6'8". And so his strike zone is bigger than most people's. Yeah. And so he commands it. He can hit. He doesn't just hit fastballs. I mean, I think the most impressive offensive feat I saw him accomplish in his short time in Fredericksburg after the Soto trade was there was a game. The FredNats were down 6 or 7-0 to the Augusta Green Jackets, the Braves affiliate. And, they had a big inning ahead of James, and there was tying runs were on base, and breaking ball off the plate just slaps it to left center field, and the FredNats were ahead. I mean, with 2 strikes, it was the type of stuff that like you see people doing in October. And I mean, and as far as like low key people go, like James Wood is not going to be run down by an 0-for-4 day. Like, he's just going to show up the next day. He doesn't talk a whole lot. He's just a very like flatlined, low key kid. That's what the manager of the FredNats in 22, Jake Lowry, called him, was flatline. Like I said, what's a way to describe James? And he's like, he's not too high, not too low. It's just a flat line. And for somebody that's 19 with that skill set, I mean, you said it. He doesn't even look like he's running. Like on the bases, I mean, his legs are so long. It's like 3 steps from first to second, and it's just effortless. He's such a good athlete. He has a basketball background. Like he played, he's from Maryland too. He's from the DMV area.
Local guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, he went down to IMG Academy in Florida, ended up going the baseball route, which obviously was smart. But I mean, he's got the basketball background. He's got the hand-eye coordination. I mean, there's nothing he can't do.
And you said something that really kind of caught my attention, is that he has the plate discipline. And Nationals fans, when you're a young guy who is, highly thought of, especially as you're coming up in the major leagues, Juan Soto got called up early on in his major league career because of that. He had plate discipline. And I'm not saying he's going to be Juan Soto. That's not what I'm here to say. But
could be.
I think he could be, and I'm not going to limit to him, because his skill set and what he's shown right now has been wildly successful in everything that he has done. But because a lot of Nationals fans, including myself, it's like, well, we probably won't see him until like 2024, maybe 2025.
Yeah.
Well, if he keeps it up this way, you can't keep him down any much longer than that. And I know that's we're jumping the guns on this, but when you say that someone has plate discipline and when he does everything so well, it's like, well, crap, this guy could be in the major league sooner than you think.
Yeah, my guess is that he will be in spring training 24, very much challenging to be playing in DC. I think that I would imagine that he might start this upcoming season in Wilmington, maybe even Harrisburg. I don't know. I think my gut tells me Wilmington. And if he is crushing Wilmington, as I expect him to, then, give him 3/4 of the season in double and then AAA. And then, who knows what could happen in spring training 24. And maybe you start him in AAA and bring him up in May or June. But 24 for me is probably the latest he'll get to DC.
Definitely. And that's what I see with that too. Because it's like, the guy just keeps on producing. You can't say too much about that. But I also want to get into some guys like TJ White and Jeremy De La Rosa real quick. But before that, I got to tell you guys about my friends from NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risk of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. And that's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. And now we bring back in Eric Bach, as we only have a couple more minutes here on Locked On Nationals. And of course, I always appreciate your time that you're giving us, because the Fredericksburg Nats, like I've been saying, was far and away the most exciting minor league team for under the Nationals umbrella as far as farm systems go, or farm teams go rather. But I want to talk about TJ White, because not a lot of Nationals fans really know about him, but he was kind of someone who, when I saw him, I was like, this kid's got something. And I don't know what it is. I can't pinpoint it, but I saw him in his power taking BP, and I'm like, oh my God, the Nationals may have found someone here.
No doubt about it. He had a crazy couple months, like I believe the month of May and then the month of July. He was up and down, but his highs were better than anyone else's. I mean, it was power, it was average. I mean, there was 1 week in particular in August where he hit probably 4 or 5 home runs in a 6-game series. I mean, there were some crazy moments that TJ had, and he's a switch hitter too, which is like such an underrated quality, I think. Obviously, most of his power came from the left side, which is not even his natural side. He's a natural righty, and saw Jason Hayward. He grew up in Atlanta, saw Jason Hayward in the Braves back at Turner Field and was said to his dad, "Hey, I want to hit lefty." And wow, that's going to benefit the Washington Nationals someday, I think. I mean, he had some stretches that were just stupid. Like, I'm talking like 4 for 5, 3 days in a row. Like,
Yeah.
that's the type of guy that he can be. He's got all the talent in the world. And talk about another guy that's just massive. Like, he's just a huge guy. I mean, he's
Big
another
dude.
high school guy, 19. He was the youngest player in the Carolina League for like most of the season before the draft. Like, the first 3 or 4 months of the season, he was the youngest player in the Carolina League. And so, I mean, the ceiling is endless for him. I mean, what a guy.
Yeah.
What a gem to find in the 5th round or the 7th round. I can't remember exactly which round he was drafted in. But really good outfielder as well, strong arm. I mean, he's the total package for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. He was a 5th round pick, I believe, out of the 2021 MLB draft.
Yeah.
But again, regardless, so far he's looking like a gem right now. But lastly, I want to end on this because you did see about a half a season of Jeremy De La Rosa. And, this guy wasn't really supposed to be what he's turned out to be, especially down in Fredericksburg. I mean, you could probably say, besides Brady House, he was your best hitter in the first half of the season. So kind of what did you see about with Jeremy De La Rosa? Because this is someone who didn't really have too much power, but then once this upcoming year or last year in 2022, he really showcased that power and he kind of took it to another level.
I would say that De La Rosa was the FredNats best hitter, even better than House in that first half. He was in Fredericksburg. The FredNats, I don't know if people know this. When they moved to Fredericksburg from Potomac, it was supposed to, the first season in Fredericksburg was supposed to be the 2020 canceled COVID minor league season. And so when they opened their doors in 2021, the FredNats lost the first 15 games of the season, started 0-15 with this group that primarily was in Wilmington this past season. De La Rosa was part of that in his age 19 season. So 2022 was his age 20 season. They started him in Fredericksburg again, and people are like, oh, he's not progressing. He's this talent, another guy that's going to fizzle out. And then in 2022, he just came out like gangbusters. I mean, played a perfect center field. And from the left side was the clutchest guy. Like, it seemed like he came up, he had in the first 2-3 months of the season had like 7 or 8 game-winning RBIs. Like,
yeah, I remember that.
He seemed to come up in a clutch situation more often than not, and then in that situation come through. Like, it's power, it's average, he was stealing bases, he was playing plus defense. I mean, it was a complete flip of the switch. I mean, you look at his slash lines from 2021 to 2022, it's like it's a different player. I mean, It was very underwhelming in 2021, and you're like, oh, this is kind of the year, make it or break it year for him in the age 20 season, which is crazy to even say, but that's the world we live in. And he made a name for himself. I mean, he rightfully shot up the prospect rankings, and I mean, he was the everyday center fielder for the FredNats. He was a leader in the clubhouse. I mean, it helped. He spent pretty much the entire 2021 season in Fredericksburg. And so he was kind of showing the guys the ropes, especially the Latin guys, that, this is how you do things every day. I mean, he turned into a real leader. And that's exactly what they were hoping for from him. Not only production on the field, but development off the field. And I think his mental development off the field allowed him to excel on the field because he always had the skills on the field. I think 2021 was the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, and you're totally right with that. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap this up. But thank you for making Locked On Nationals your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Eric, this is a ton of fun, man. Please plug whatever you need to plug, because I know you do play-by-play for college basketball. You got a lot of different things going on, and that's always fun to catch up with.
Yeah, man. Just follow the FredNats at FXBGNats on Twitter and Instagram. Lots of good off-season content going up. And I follow me on Twitter at Eric_Box7, and we can talk about the FredNats, talk about the national system, or whatever else. I don't take it too seriously on there, so we try to have a little fun. But appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, no problem. We'll do this again soon. So, all right, that was Eric Bach from the Fredericksburg Nats, and I will talk to you guys on a later date. Have a good one.